What should we make of the Boston Celtics? Are they an all-time great team? 64-18 in the regular season, lost just 3 games throughout the postseason. Jaylen Brown, MVP of the final series, and Joe Mazzulla, another great victory for a Catholic champion, the head coach of the Boston Celtics. Man, there's a lot to discuss about the Boston Celtics closing out the NBA Finals, knocking off, beating up the Dallas Mavericks 4-1, closed it out last night. We'll discuss today. Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I'm Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Tuesday. Happy day before Juneteenth. Aren't you excited? Juneteenth is coming up. We got a great show planned for you today. Jay Skapinac is going to join us. You guys know Skapinac. He's quite the expert on the NBA. He's going to help me break down what to make of the Boston Celtics. TJ Moe's going to join us. We're going to talk about Joe Mazzulla and why Catholic men seem to be coming up big everywhere. And then, of course, we'll hear from the Korean Carousel on an assortment of sports issues. Stay tuned for that. Hey, make sure you're checking out extra Fearless content on Blaze TV. You have to be a Blaze TV subscriber to get it. Go to blazetv.com/fearless. Use the promo code FEARLESS, and you can save $20 on your yearly subscription, and you'll have access to conversations like the one we had yesterday, where me and Steve Kim gave our thoughts on Charles Barkley retiring from television. And it was quite interesting, our discussion. Shamika and I, if you go to Blaze TV Plus and get your subscription, Shamika and I had a conversation about Sneeko, some internet influencer and some fitness influencer, both of them punch guys, but it was all over social media. Shamika and I discussed it, but you got to have access to Extra Fearless to get that. Go to blazetv.com. Get your subscription. It's important. It's also important that we thank and you thank our great friends at Good Ranchers. Use my promo code FEARLESS at goodranchers.com. And with your subscription, you can claim $100 off plus free smoked brats for a year while supporting veterans this Independence Day. It's time to revolt and claim your independence from the grocery store meat aisle. Make sure you're supporting Good Ranchers. Today's episode, and most of our episodes are brought to you by Good Ranchers. All right, let's bring in Jay Skapinac. The Boston Celtics won by 18, I believe, last night. They controlled that game from start to finish. And so the first thing I feel like this was an odd NBA season, Skap. I don't, it feels like we're in the middle of storyline changes. LeBron James is exiting as the face of the league. No one quite knows what to do with Nikola Jokic. He's the best player in the league, but he's not really the face of the league. The Boston Celtics really had a tremendous season. It's 64-18 regular season, just 3 losses in the postseason. Skap, what should we make of the Boston Celtics? Is this an all-time great team? Is this a dynasty in the making?
Well, Jason, as always, there are 2 ways to look at anything in the sports world: through the black and white raw numbers and through the colored prism of context. And this one in particular looks a lot different depending on which way you want to look at it. Let me first give you the black and white case real quickly for this year's Boston Celtics team as an all-time team. Look, you mentioned the playoff run, but setting that aside for a moment, the 64 regular season wins are a bit misleading because they won the number 1 seed in their conference by 14 games, Jason. So, I mean, they virtually had the 1 seed locked up in their conference by Christmas. So many of the games down the stretch that they did lose probably could have been wins had they needed to win them in order to chase down any kind of a viable playoff run into getting that 1 seed. Then when you look at the fact they were the number 1 rated net offensive team in the regular season and the number 2 rated net defensive team in the regular season, All of it, Jason, produced the fifth best net differential in NBA history. 11.34 points per game net differential. You'll know the four teams that are above them. The 72 LA Lakers, the one championship team where Jerry West finally got over the hump. They still hold the all-time NBA record for win streak, 33 consecutive wins in a season. The team, of course, that famously paired Will Chamberlain and Gail Goodrich along with Jerry West. That's the number one team in net differential. Number two is the 71 Milwaukee Bucks, led by young Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Oscar Robertson. Number three, the 96-72 win Michael Jordan Chicago Bulls. And number four, the 2016-17 Golden State Warriors. So the team after, the year after they won 73 games and added Kevin Durant, that team. So those are the only four teams, Jason, ever that had a better net differential than this year's Boston Celtics. And then you factor in the championship win and the only having the three losses, 16-3, and basically they were never pushed at any point in the playoffs. And when you just look at it in black and white, there is a case for this team to be one of the handful of greatest single season teams in NBA history. But when you add the context in, Jason, I don't even know if they were the best team this season. But it is what it is, ultimately.
Whoa. So you've saved the best for last. You rattle off all these all-time stats and say, like, wow, what they did was really impressive. And then you say, but I'm not sure if they were the best team this season. Explain that.
Well, Jason, when you look at this Celtics team, they have been undeniable choke artists for basically the last 3 or 4 years. They blew the 2022 NBA Finals against the Golden State Warriors. They were up 2-1 in that series, and Jayson Tatum had an all-time gag job in that series. He shot only 36% for the entire series, and they didn't win another game after they were up 2-1, and the Warriors went on to capture Steph Curry's fourth title. Then last year, they were the favorites last year. They get all the way into the Eastern Conference Finals, go down 3-0 to the 8th seed Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals round. They then win 3 consecutive to force a Game 7, and it looked like they were going to become the first team ever to overcome an 0-3 deficit. They were at home in Game 7 against that 8 seed. They were 7.5-point favorites, and they get worked by 20 points in that game with Jayson Tatum again throwing up all over himself. 14 points on 5 of 13 in 41 minutes in that Game 7 20-point loss at home. So there were questions coming into this playoff season. You know, sure, they had the regular season, but would they be able to put it all together in this playoff run? And quite frankly, we never really found out because every single team in their conference got hurt. Every top tier contender that could have challenged them or pushed them. Giannis Antetokounmpo missed the whole playoffs. They lost in the first round. Joel Embiid missed the second half of the entire season with a meniscus injury that he re-aggravated in their first round matchup against the Knicks. They go out in the first round. So then the Knicks, kind of the de facto third best team in the conference, they then get hurt and lose all their players. They entered the playoffs without Julius Randle. They then lose OG Anunoby halfway through the Indiana Pacers series in the conference semis. And then Jalen Brunson breaks his hand in Game 7 against the Pacers. So then they somehow squeak all the way into the Eastern Conference Finals against Boston. The Celtics somehow slither their way into the NBA Finals by beating like the 4th, 5th, and 6th best teams in their conference. Then they get the undeniable best matchup they could possibly have hoped for coming out of the Western Conference in the Dallas Mavericks. And, you know, you really, again, I have to blame on injuries. Jamal Murray was a shell of himself throughout the course of these playoffs. He barely cracked 39% for the entire postseason. He was non-existent primarily throughout the Minnesota Timberwolves series. if Murray were healthy, if the Nuggets got into this finals, Jason, they were 2-0 against Boston in the regular season this year. Denver, they played twice, and Denver beat them twice. It was a bad matchup for Boston. Then you factor in, the maturity of the Denver Nuggets. They were a seasoned champion coming off of last year, something that, Dallas couldn't provide. That was their first time there, led by a young 25-year-old superstar in Luka Doncic. So really, all of the chips fell exactly how they should have for the Boston Celtics. Had Denver gotten here, I think we would be talking about, honestly, a repeat for Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets.
Scap, you've thrown another curveball, but I think I'm going to call it a strike. Interesting. Before I get to Jayson Tatum and the MVP, I want to ask you something about the Dallas Mavericks. What do we make of them? Do you expect them to be back? Kyrie was on fire coming into the NBA Finals, and someone threw a cold bottle of water on Kyrie. Luka Doncic was on his way to being the next Larry Bird. Someone threw a cold bottle of water on him. What should we make of the Dallas Mavericks moving forward?
I mean, they'll undeniably look at this season as a success. They were the 5 seed. They were struggling throughout the first part of the season. They made 2 key acquisitions at the trade deadline, bringing in Goffard and Washington. And really, that transformed their defense for the whole playoff run. And Kyrie and Luka, look, that trade was made last season. They didn't even make the play-in tournament after that trade was completed for Kyrie Irving. So the fact that they put it all together, the two of them found a way to coexist and make a run into the finals, they will look at this series and this playoff run ultimately as a success. And the series is like a learning step. But look, Kyrie looked at times old and a little washed in this series. He is getting a bit older. I believe he's 33 years old now. And the Mavericks are kind of capped out, Jason. They have very little flexibility this season, this summer, to really change the dynamic of that roster in any way. So, I mean, they don't even have a first round pick. They have the 58th overall selection in this upcoming draft. And really, like I said, they can't make any big signings in free agency. So really, the trade market is the only way that they can explore, improving upon this roster in any way. And they really don't have that much on, appealing in that standpoint either. There's a couple untouchable guys. So really, Dallas is probably just going to hope. Look, like I said, they brought in Washington and Goffard. They brought them in at the deadline. So maybe the cohesion of them playing a full playoff run together, they'll just automatically be improved. Lively was great as a rookie. Maybe he'll take, the next step coming into his second year. Maybe Luka Doncic will do some maturing, much needed maturing in the offseason, get in the gym, condition himself, actually take the defensive side of the ball more seriously all the time and not just in little key stretches. And, maybe the Dallas Mavericks will just grow up and grow together a little bit and improve that way. But look, ultimately, like I said, Jamal Murray wasn't right in the playoffs. The Nuggets are going to find a way to improve their roster a bit. The Oklahoma City Thunder, the number 1 seed in the NBA playoffs, in the Western Conference playoffs, they have a lot of cap space. So they're going to go out and tinker and bring in some veterans, probably bolster their front court in the offseason. And then look, the Minnesota Timberwolves were a young up-and-coming team as well. They're probably going to take the next step. Anthony Edwards he just completed his 4th season. He's going to be better next year. So I don't know. I think Dallas, Luka's great in the regular season. I don't know that they have another deep playoff run coming anytime soon. It's definitely not guaranteed.
All right, so here's what I'm most interested in today to some degree. I was a little shocked, and maybe I'm the only one that was shocked, that Jaylen Brown was selected as MVP of that final series over Jayson Tatum. From points to rebounds to assists, Jayson Tatum outshined Jaylen Brown. Game 5 last night, Jayson Tatum has a great game, great all-around game, puts up 30-some-odd points. Jaylen Brown, on the other hand, 7 of 23, 7 of 24 from the field, something like that. I was a little bit surprised And then I thought, well, maybe I'm not surprised because they're cooking up something as it relates to Jaylen Brown. He's the head of the NBA Players Association. He's been put in a position. He's the new woke leader of the NBA, of the NBA. But before I go down that rabbit hole, am I wrong for having a slight problem with Jaylen Brown being MVP?
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I was surprised as well that Tatum didn't get it. And quite frankly, I'm not saying that Tatum necessarily deserved it, but I was surprised from the standpoint he had the best game last night in game 5. So I was surprised that kind of prisoner of the moment. There's not many people that vote on that finals MVP award. So I thought maybe the media members that did have a vote would kind of be the prisoner of the moment and kind of coronate Tatum. You know, it's a great narrative. Tatum overcomes all of his playoff struggles and shortcomings to not only win the championship, but get the finals MVP. But when you look at it, Jayson, from an overall series standpoint, yes, he out, 22 points per game, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, just about. He, outperformed Brown in every metric there, where Brown he averaged about 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists in the series. But Tatum really pumped up those averages last night, Jayson. He entered last night's game through the first 4 games of the series. He was averaging 20 points per game on 36% shooting. So it was like another throwback to his 2022 performance against the Warriors, where he shot 36% from the field. Through 4 games in this series, he was shooting 36% from the field in the finals. Now, the end of the series numbers looks better because of what he did last night in game 5, but that was a very low pressure moment, Jayson. When you look at the first half of that game, it was a 21-point lead for the Celtics at halftime. And Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, whether they were getting shut down by the defense or just choking or maybe a mixture of both, at halftime, those two guys combined for 14 points on 6 of 18 from the field. And again, they were down 21 points. And Tatum, look, they were up 3-1. It was a pressure-free game that Tatum capitalized on to pump up his averages. To me, though, like you said, Brown struggled throughout the series as well. He only shot about 43% from the field. I would actually look to Jrue Holiday, who was the head of the defensive snake on the perimeter. He kind of led that charge, and that was really the key in Boston's destruction of Dallas. And he averaged 15 points per game, 7 rebounds, 4 assists on like 56% shooting. And, there are precedents before where we see these guys who don't have the eye-popping box scores that get it because of their defensive effort. Most recently that comes to mind, Andre Iguodala in the 2014-15 Warriors series. And then even if you go back a few years earlier, young Kawhi Leonard with the San Antonio Spurs and the defensive effort he did on LeBron James in 2014. Those guys didn't average, they more than 14 or 15 points either, but because of the defensive effort factored in, they got it. And I think Jrue Holiday, honestly, for me, should have been more of a consideration. And from an offensive standpoint, he basically won them the game too. He was massive in that game. So if it were my vote, it probably would have been Holiday, actually.
So, that's interesting. What about Jaylen Brown's effort? Some people are saying he was responsible for slowing Luka Doncic down.
Brown was great defensively as well. I don't want to take anything away from him on that side of the ball. He did a great job on the perimeter defense as well. And in game 3, I want to give a shout out to Brown here as well. Game 3, where to me that was the most important game of this entire series. It was the first game at Dallas with Boston up 2-0, and Boston had a humongous lead in the fourth quarter. They were up 20 points with like 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter of that game 3, and with 4.5 minutes left, Jayson, only like 5 minutes later, it was a 1-point game. So Boston was doing standard, typical Boston-like things and barfing all over themselves in that game. And Brown was the steadying influencer down the stretch of that game. He made the big shots that kind of calmed that tide and got that game over the hump, so to speak. And then once it's 3-0, of course, we know the series is all but over. at 3-0. So Brown, I don't necessarily hate the Brown selection. I certainly could have seen an argument for Tatum as well, and Drew Holiday as well. And then Kristaps Porzingis, with the tone that he set in game one, had he not accrued that bizarre, very strange foot injury, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce it here, he might have been in the mix too, but he missed, basically half the series. His plus minus on off though was the best for the Celtics throughout the series. So it truly was a team effort by the Boston Celtics, and the roster was made for that, Jayson, because of the choking tendencies they had. They had to become too big to fail, and so they were.
Scap, you've laid a great foundation for me. I'm going to take the conversation a little different direction, but thank you so much. Appreciate it. Great job as always. Jay Skapinac, Skapinac. Follow him on YouTube, follow him on Twitter, social media. The guy is tremendous. I think Jaylen Brown, and I'm not hating on him. I'm not, because there was a lot of different candidates, and it's not like Jayson Tatum was overwhelming. I love Scap's argument, because I wasn't thinking a lot about Drew Holiday, but I love Scap's argument for Drew Holiday. But what I think mostly is that Jaylen Brown has been anointed and appointed. And I don't want to call him a plant, but I'm going to call him a plant to some degree. And calm down. This is not hate. It's just speaking factually about what transpires in the NBA. And it's Jaylen Brown smells a little like Chris Paul to me. And Chris Paul was the guy that, again, he's in all these State Farm commercials. Chris Paul is paraded around like he's the Isaiah Thomas of this era. No championships. No, he's not Isaiah Thomas. Chris Paul's paraded around like he's a good guy. He's not a good guy. I'm not saying any of these things are true about Jaylen Brown, but I'm telling you the NBA is a narrative, agenda, Black Lives Matter, LGBTQIA+ narrative agenda organization. And the reason why I'm holding my tongue and I just want to let things play out, but I want to keep you ahead of the conversation. The reason why I'm holding back a tiny bit is because Jaylen Brown's clearly being mentored and developed by my good friend Isaiah Thomas, probably the person in the sports world I have the most respect for. However, I'm just saying that about Jaylen Brown. You guys know how I feel about Isaiah Thomas. I've been an Isaiah Thomas defender for 25 some odd years. Isaiah Thomas is a force for good, in my opinion. I don't believe any of that garbage. Anuka Brown Sanders, New York Knicks. Isaiah got in a feud with David Stern. And I'm not, and I've never said this fully to Isaiah Thomas, but I'm not even sure if Isaiah Thomas knows who he was really in a feud with. But I have some suspicions about who he's in a feud with. And well, in the next segment, TJ Moe will come on, and we're going to talk about Joe Mazzulla and what's going on with these Catholic men and these guys that have grown up and lean into their Catholic faith, and just there's something going on with Catholic men. And the Catholics have been feuding with Jewish people, particularly secular Jews, for quite some time. And so when I want to, I'm saying what I think. I couldn't care less. I'm saying what I know. I couldn't care less. But it's like Jaylen Brown has been selected. He's the head of the NBA Players Association, or same deal as Chris Paul. And then I want to play you these clips of Jaylen Brown and this woke stuff that he loves to spew when I start talking about how he's been selected. And so there's an opportunity here to further build his resume. and the narrative that like, oh, Jaylen Brown's got next. LeBron James is on his way out. Jaylen Brown is the MVP of the finals. The Boston Celtics, they may be a dynasty team. This is a great young core. 64-18 during the regular season. As Skap just explained, maybe they would have had 4 or 5, 6 more victories if they had actually had to compete down the stretch. They go 16-3 in the postseason. Jaylen Brown's resume is being built, and part of the reason his resume is being built is because he continually stays on message as far as BLM and all the racial idolatry and everything else. Here's a clip of Jaylen Brown talking about players taking a knee.
Angela Davis once said that racism is so dangerous, not because of individual actors, because it's deeply embedded in the apparatus. I think about that quote a lot when I think about the national anthem, which was written by Francis Scott Key, who was a slave owner. When we talk about the national anthem, we don't really talk a lot about the third verse that was written, which addresses, slavery, mentions like there's no hope for, a hireling or a slave, but the gloom of the grave. So racism is so deeply embedded in our country that people don't even flinch or even shift at the idea. It kind of is what it is. It's not the protest. It's not the police officers, the police brutality. It is. All of that is important, but it's also, the framework of systemic oppression. And that's starting with the national anthem. So I think being able to take a knee is appropriate, and it may not even really be enough. But I'm proud of the NBA for being a part of the right side of how people feel.
Great.
So that's Jaylen Brown covering all of the proper talking points that the left wants you to say. He just covered it all. And they're just talking points. There's no depth to them. This is the stuff that gets repeated over and over. Oh, the third verse, Francis Scott Key, and the national anthem. It doesn't, and somehow this national anthem in the third verse, and because it was written by Francis Scott Key and blah, blah, it's embedded, the racism's embedded in it. But you'll never hear Jaylen Brown or any of these guys talk about, well, hold on. The 16 bars rapped by virtually any of these commercial rappers, they're embedded with anti-black racism. But that's all fine and dandy. And every kid will repeat some of these rap songs 50 million more times than they ever will the national anthem. We play the national anthem at sporting events. How often do kids go to sporting events? Take the average kid in the ghetto or in the inner city or even a working class or middle class black. How many sporting events do they actually go to? Maybe, let's go on the high number. Let's say they go to 5. Well, you know what? Because of high school sports and all that, maybe they 20 times a year, they're at a sporting event and have to recognize the national anthem. Maybe it's 40 times. How many times a year do they repeat rap lyrics that are embedded, laced with anti-black woman, all of this stuff? But that's not embedded racism. That's black power, I guess. It's just the talking points are just annoy me and just like, hey, what's going on here with Jaylen Brown? What's he being groomed for, and who's grooming him? Is Barack Obama perhaps grooming him? When I hear, and I could go on clip after clip after clip, I'm just going to play one more, but there's a lot of clips of Jaylen Brown talking all of this woke BS. I want to play another one. This is him talking about, I believe, reparations or no, I'm sorry, This is him talking about racism in Boston. Play the clip.
I do think racism is bigger than Game 3 of the playoffs. So I want to urge the media to paint that narrative as well. Because when it's painted in that manner, it's insensitive to people who are actually dealing with, racism on a daily basis, the constructs and the constraints of systemic racism and in our school system, inequality in education, lack of opportunity, lack of resources, adequate housing, affordable housing, adequate healthcare, tokenism, and the list goes on. So, I recognize my privilege as an athlete, but once you get to a certain point, nothing that you experience overtakes the experiences that people deal with on a daily basis. So I want to emphasize that as well. I understand the frustration right now. I've seen what's going on in sports and in sporting arenas with the two incidents I've seen is with Russell Westbrook and Trae Young, and I'm pissed. To be honest, I don't think we should have to put up with that, and I don't think that's okay by any means necessary. But when I look in the media and I see those incidents attached to like the frame of racism, yes, I think it's important to address those situations. But if the topic is racism, I think that those incidents don't compare, or those belligerent comments don't compare to what, systemic racism is currently doing in our community and has done in the past. So it's important to frame it in that context.
So, what is Jaylen Brown? 25, 26 years old. Let me double check to see how much time did he spend in college. And again, he's talking about recognizing his privilege as an athlete. And one of the privileges of an athlete is you don't have to be the greatest student. That's one of the privileges of being an athlete. And I know that according to, his resume and buildup, the guy is a tremendous, according to his resume, a tremendous student. And I think maybe he got offered some academic opportunities early on. He went to Cal Berkeley for a year, again, Northern California. Who's grooming Jaylen Brown? He became the highest paid NBA player in history without a resume that said that he should get that position. And I want to go back to Stephen A. Smith a couple of weeks ago, said something critical about Jaylen Brown's personality, or he repeated some reporting or information he felt like he had about Jaylen Brown and his background and his personality or whatever. It was really somewhat of a harmless comment. People came after Stephen A. Smith for that. People shut Stephen A. Smith down like, whoa, how can you say this about Jaylen Brown? And look, the guy I respect the most in sports, Isaiah Thomas, was one of those people who came down on Stephen A. Smith for attacking Jaylen Brown, or for even just, I wouldn't even say Stephen A. Smith attacked him. He just referenced some information that slightly put Jaylen Brown in a negative light. But all of it seems like an overreaction. Like, what makes Jaylen Brown so special? Oh, he repeats all the talking points. He loves saying systemic racism. I would love to see this is what they're always trying to position these athletes as the next Muhammad Ali or Malcolm X Light. What I never see any of these guys do is face resistance. They're always playing flag football. They never play tackle football. And what I mean by that is I would like for Jaylen Brown, who wants to talk about systemic racism and all these other things, I would like to see him sit down with someone who disagrees with him and gets challenged on it. Because I think a lot of it will turn out just like Charlemagne the God getting challenged by Bill Maher earlier or late last week. These guys fold up real quick because they're not standing on very much information. Jaylen Brown has all of the talking points. I think he's been anointed. The last thing I'll play before we get to TJ Moe, this clip from Stephen A. Smith that I think we played yesterday. I reduced it down because Stephen A. Smith said something very accurate that he's in on. again, sometimes he may not even realize how in on it he is, or maybe his eyes are just coming open to just how much he's in on how all of these things are orchestrated. He said this. These were Stephen A. Smith's words. We played him yesterday, and he was talking about Caitlin Clark. Play the clip of Stephen A. Smith talking about things being orchestrated.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and others were trying to make things happen in the 50s, in the 60s. Rosa Parks refusing to give us a seat up on a bus. Everybody knows that was something that was orchestrated because a bigger issue needed to be addressed, and they had to find the right person to address it. And throughout history, we've seen a plethora of things transpire and take place where an individual had the light shined on them, and it was orchestrated and plotted and planned because a bigger message and a bigger issue needed to be addressed, but the right person needed to come along to give us the license to address it.
Stephen A. Smith has no idea that he's actually talking about himself. He's a pawn that's been moved into position. He's orchestrated. He has no, and then he's talking about Caitlin Clark. She orchestrated that. She allows us to talk about this issue or that issue. And then he goes all the way back. And this is the message being preached to young people. It's like, hey, the facts don't matter. Because in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, black civil rights activists orchestrated some things to achieve their goals. And so that message has been spread to all of these influencers and all these other players. It's like, hey, look, we're going to orchestrate some things because we have a bigger goal. We're out to gain power. See, at one point, black people were out to gain full citizenship and freedom. And yes, hey, we're going to use Rosa Parks here to highlight the Montgomery bus boycott and what's going on and the unequal treatment. Got it. In an advancement of freedom and citizenship. Now it's just a power grab. And people, they're going to say we're pursuing freedom. No, it's power. And everything's being orchestrated. And they're using people, perhaps a Jaylen Brown, certainly a Stephen A. Smith, Caitlin Clark, who's just out trying to play basketball. All of this stuff is orchestrated. And my problem with all of it, and this is why I can't get on board with Jaylen Brown, despite my affinity for Isaiah Thomas. I don't hear him, and maybe I just haven't looked close enough. He doesn't talk about God. He doesn't talk about Jesus Christ. And so all of this orchestrating that they're doing, it's all detached from God. Everything they're doing now is very secular, and I'm not on board with it. Because until people realize, like Joe Mazzulla has, that we have one provider, Jesus Christ, there's nothing that black people are trying to accomplish, allegedly for good. Nothing good is going to come from that unless we're totally dependent upon Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Period. End of story. There will be a few individuals that will seize power. Ketanji Brown Jackson, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama. Black people have been using these little orchestrated tactics to seize power. Is anything getting better for the black masses? Are more of us getting married? Are more of us staying married and raising and developing our kids properly? Are test scores and academic achievement rising for black kids? Are less black men violating criminal laws and going to prison? This is all orchestrated for power, not for the greater good. That's my problem. Guys, you know I love talking about preborn and our passion for preborn. No organization supports our worldview that life begins at conception better than preborn. Preborn provides ultrasounds to expectant mothers who are considering abortion. Once this woman sees her baby in the womb, an image of her baby in the womb, once she hears that baby's heartbeat, she is more than twice as likely to choose life. And that's when preborn steps in and steps up. Preborn will provide for that mother everything she needs to get through the pregnancy and for the first 2 years of that baby's life. They're able to do that because guys like us, girls like you guys support Preborn. I've introduced you to Dan Steiner, the founder of Preborn. He's been on the show several times. He was a sponsor. Preborn was a sponsor of Roll Call. We know where our money is going. It's paying for ultrasounds. It's paying for diapers and baby food and all the things a woman needs to get that baby through the first 2 years of life outside the womb. There's two ways to give. Pound 250, say the keyword baby. Pound 250, say the keyword baby. Whether you give $28, which will pay for one ultrasound, or whether you give $280, which will pay for 10 ultrasounds, it's all appreciated. It all goes towards a great cause. The other way to give, preborn.com/fearless, preborn.com/fearless. That's the way I prefer to give because, I just like, make sure they know the money's coming from Fearless. So anyway, join me and us and all the Fearless soldiers in supporting Preborn. It will make you feel good. You'll know your money is being well spent and serving a great cause. We're fighting a demonic, evil culture that wants to kill babies. There's a way we can fight back. Pound 250, keyword baby, or visit preborn.com/fearless. We'll talk about Joe Mazzulla, who has turned his identity and life over to Christ. That's why I love him. That's why I support him, because he actually knows the source of happiness, purpose in life, proper progress, the development of young people and kids. He knows the source. We only have one provider. And what's happened to many of us, particularly in Black so-called Christians, we think we're going to combine Christianity with racial idolatry and seize power, and things are going to be better for us. God doesn't want to be partnered with racial idolatry. Has no interest in it. All right, TJ Moe, next. See, the word Jesus Christ in Christianity, it's like kryptonite to atheists. And so they don't know what to do.
Drains my powers.
Your weakness is...
His name is John C.
The man brought up Christianity, and because they had no follow-up question and didn't know what to do, you think that's Joe Mazzulla's fault.
That you are so not... Oh, God. Balls.
If I went to Harvard, I'd probably be some atheist, idiot, loser.
I burst out into tears when I saw that word of congratulations, and I literally could not stop crying for 15 minutes.
All right, welcome back. Let's bring in the show me kid, TJ Moe. TJ, I was just talking with Skapinac, and then I went kind of solo and gave my thoughts on Jaylen Brown and how I feel like, man, some of this feels orchestrated. He feels like he's a plan. He does all the Black Lives Matter talking points. He's on board with all the woke stuff, and somehow he gets MVP. And now I want to juxtapose that to Joe Mazzulla, the coach of the Boston Celtics, and why I'm so thrilled that the Boston Celtics won the championship, because I think Joe Mazzulla is actually the role model or the example we should be pointing to, while the system is going to be pointing us to Jaylen Brown and, oh my God, he's finals MVP, he's the highest paid guy in the NBA, he's the president of the Players Association, oh my God, and he has all the right talking points. And then you have Joe Mazzulla, who's, 35 years old, the youngest coach to win an NBA title since Bill Russell was 35 years old and a player coach for Boston in 1969. And Joe Mazzulla has things figured out in terms of what his identity is. I want to play this clip of him talking, and this is not from last night, but I want to play this clip of him talking about his identity, and this is where the real solutions are. But the media and the system is never going to celebrate this guy properly the way they should because he doesn't have a secular worldview. Let's play the clip.
It really doesn't matter what you are or what you believe in. Life is about the way in which the lens you look at it and the way the lens you look at yourself. And we have the choice to make to how we look at ourselves. We also have the choice to make to decide whether we're going to care about how people view us or how they don't. And there's multiple lenses that each person can look at. I am half African American, half Italian. And so, but most importantly, the decision that I made in my life, I've decided to not look at my lens through either one of those, and I've decided to look at my lens through that of which is Christianity. And so my identity is in him first, and that comes before anything else. And that's just been important to me because what he's done for me in my life, the people that I have around me that have brought me there, and it's important for my wife and it's important for my family. It doesn't mean that it's any more important than any other lens to which we can look at. But for me and my house, we will serve the Lord, and we're going to look at the lens of life through that of Christianity and everything that comes with it.
Love this dude. And again, we keep going back to what's going on with Catholic men. They're standing up and speaking truth boldly. I can't say I agree with everything Catholics do, but man, these Catholic dudes are impressing me. And so I got no hate for him. I certainly have no hate for Joe Mazzulla. It's everything that we talk about on this show about a biblical worldview and looking at life through the lens of a Christian identity rather than a black identity, a gay identity, a transgender identity, a woman's identity, a man's identity. My lens that I'm looking through life is like, okay, what does the Bible say? What does God say? What would Jesus want me to do? It's working for Joe Mazzulla in a big way. And I think it's working for everybody that chooses that lens. But for the most part, the world gives us all these other lenses, and we wake up and say, oh, as a black person, how am I supposed to respond to this? Rather than, as a Christian, how am I supposed to respond to this? What should I be doing today? Joe Mazzulla's got it figured out.
He certainly does. Did you see his shirt he put on yesterday? He said, but first, let me thank God. Like, think about that. This guy wins an NBA title as a 35-year-old, coming off of a season where he maybe should have won it last year and there was some disappointment. And the first thing he thinks to do is, let me put on a shirt and put God at the center of this conversation. The guy's got it figured out. And the only thing I disagree with in the clip that you just played is he said, hey, it doesn't mean one lens is better than the other. Yes, it does. It absolutely does. I've seen the outcomes. I've seen the outcomes of people who have decided that their race is the lens that they want to live life through. It's destructive. It's divisive. It's nonsense. And he's in the middle of an interview, but he's made it very clear that for him and his family and his team, this is how you succeed. And I think, look, this is what you want out of a coach. Can you imagine a coach that's walking around and figuring out what the woke talking point is for today? Like, I never played for a woke coach. And so the coaches that I play, my high school coach was a strong Catholic guy. My college coach was, I think, non-denominational Christian, and who knows if Belichick's a believer or not. But those guys were none of them remotely woke. Those guys walked predominantly in their faith. I mean, they were in our chapels. And so I think as a coach, players are up and down all the time. And, the Jaylen Browns of the world, they're going to be high one day, probably literally, and then the next day they'll be down wherever they are. That's how players go. It's the coach's job to keep them where they are. So I'll tell you, as a 35-year-old, there are probably players on his team close to his age. He has something in him, and my guess would be it's his faith, that allows him to command that respect. And you see it when I saw some sound bites with Jayson Tatum. When this dude talks, everybody shuts up and listens. That's pretty hard for a 35-year-old in the NBA as a coach.
I'm going to not defend, but rationalize his one little misstep as he's trying to humbly say, hey, this is the choice I made. You're free to make a different choice and look at the world a different way. And he's just trying to be probably respectful of all the guys on his team in the Boston organization, because he knows that he's in a high-risk situation by wearing his faith on his sleeves. Look, it got Mark Jackson in trouble. Mark Jackson's out in Northern California coaching the Golden State Warriors and trying to wear his faith on his sleeves, and it got him sideways with the LGBTQIA plus silent P alphabet mafia, and he can't get another coaching job. And so Mazzulla's trying to walk that fine line of, you know where I stand, you can free to stand someplace else. I agree with you. It caught my ear too when he said that, but it's like, I get the position he's in and I get what he does on a daily basis, including wearing the T-shirt last night. That was obviously a planned thing. Hey, I'm going to have this platform. I'm going to make sure everybody knows where I stand. But I think this Mazzulla thing is even more important because I think the Celtics organization, Brad Stevens, and I don't know what Brad Stevens' faith walk is. I have some suspicions, but I don't know. But I think when they pivoted away so quickly from Ime Udoka, that it was a calculated decision of like, you know what, Ime screwed up and we're going to get rid of him. But part of the reason they did that so comfortably is because, like, man, we got this young guy who checks every box in terms of values and what we think and what traditional coaches, because the great coaches, football in particular, but even basketball, this faith foundation is at the root of it. And when Monty Williams had it going on in Phoenix, now it hadn't been going on in Detroit, but I think Brad Stevens and the Celtics organization made a values decision and said, hey, man, we can upgrade in terms of values and we'll live with the growing process as Joe Mazzulla develops into a head coach. But instead of having some guy who's, banging women in the workplace, we can get a guy that wears his faith on his sleeves. That's just a home run hire, and Udoka did the Boston Celtics a favor.
Yeah, it's interesting. When the rubber meets the road, even the woke people are like, hey, let's go with the Christians. That's our best bet. Because they live in this woke world that they've created that now they have to run away from Udoka. And we can't mess up again. Who do we go to next? We better go to the Christians. Those guys are least likely to screw it up. At least they're trying. These other people don't have any standards that they're living by. Their morality changes by the day, and we'll defend it depending on what color they are. And so he's like, let's go to the Christians. That guy has a stated belief system that we think he will try to stand by. Certainly this dude who seems to be unafraid of anything. I'm telling you, man, to broaden the conversation a little bit, what was it last week, I guess, talking about the Catholics. You know who else is headed down this road? Jim Harbaugh is a Catholic, came out as pro-life. That's not easy to do. John Harbaugh, Catholic, just randomly in the middle of a press conference, quoting scripture. Brock Purdy, a Catholic. I can't figure out if this one's, I've seen mixed reviews on this, whether he's just Christian or Catholic, but Jonathan Isaac. Like, there's a lot of these dudes, and I'm wondering, this goes back to a private conversation we had yesterday, is like the only people in America today that you can absolutely say anything you want about is Christians. And so has that actually been a good thing for us? Because we've one of your themes of this show is like, hey, we're not doing these young black kids any favors because you protect them, put them in this little bubble, and they never have to go through anything. No criticism ever comes their way. Well, Christians have been brutalized in America verbally for the last 20 years or so. And are we now coming into a period where we can take it? It's taken a while because in America, criticizing Christians was not a good idea for a very long time because everybody claimed to be Christian. Now about 70% of America claims to be Christian in some form or fashion. Most of them don't go to church. Most of them don't actually believe in the Bible. This is true based on all the polling that we have. They say, well, the Bible, it's a good guidebook. And so the actual Christians have been destroyed for about 20 years now. And has that made men strong enough who actually believe in this stuff and will stick to it to say, tough, I've been through it, and you can't hurt me now?
I don't know if I'll get to responding to your direct message there, but I think the Celtics were like, wow, look at all these pieces we've put together. We got these two building blocks, Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and we're in a league where they're trying to enforce DEI. And so Ime Udoka just wet his pants, took a dump on himself, and we're in a league to DEI. And so they're like, well, hold on, man, we got this Christian over here who checks the DEI box, and this is can't miss. We got to go this route. And I'm hoping that we're going to see more of that. It's like, do you want true leadership? And really, to get it's got to be someone who's authentically Christian, who is authentically not trying to combine Christianity with racial idolatry. That's you can't do it. And too much of the, tomorrow we'll have a Juneteenth show about Mark Lamont Hill. And Mark Lamont Hill went to a Catholic church on the south side of Chicago, St. Sabina, and gave a sermon. And it's at a black Catholic church led by a white priest, Michael Flager. But they're trying to combine racial idolatry with Christianity. It doesn't work. God wants to be your sole provider. And when you start trying to package it with your other identities, you're actually destroying, because, again, it's classic idolatry. You're putting something ahead of God. God wants to be your only provider. And that's the messaging here from Joe Mazzulla is like, hey, I've chosen this identity. I've put the other identities to the side. It's great. And I want to piggyback off of the criticism and praise thing that you're talking about, and that maybe Christians, our skin has been toughened up, but you said it was just verbally Christians have been attacked, but it's been more than verbally in the work environment. Again, if you wear your Christian faith in the corporate work environment, there's a little checkbox they put next to your name that says, can't be a leader, because we can't trust this guy. He won't be on board, or woman, he or she won't be on board with the LGBTQ initiatives that we're going to put forth, and the Pride Month stuff we're going to put forth, and the Black Lives Matter stuff we're going to put forth. And so those guys can't be leaders. They either have to totally conceal their Christian identity, or they need to be secular. And that's where I give the Celtics credit. They're letting this guy wear his identity. They're receiving the benefits of that, of his leadership and all that. But I want to play this other clip from Joe Mazzulla talking about the dangers and the benefits of criticism and praise. Play the clip.
You faced criticism. You had calls for your job even at times last year. So how have these two seasons challenged you? How have they changed you, and how have they rewarded you?
I feel like it's going to be like that for the rest of my career, as it should be. I think just having an understanding that praise and criticism are both just as dangerous if you don't handle them well. And I think we talked about that as a team this year. Like, winning is just as dangerous as losing if you don't handle it well. And I think our guys handled winning the right way by, whether we won or lost, we just moved on to the next game. So, and it's Boston. Like, we wouldn't want it any other way. And I think the ownership and the responsibility to give back to the franchise, give back to the city, give back to it, that's just part of it. And so I think, but you need it. Like, you need that. You need criticism. You need praise. You need expectations. All those things go into making who you are as a person, making who you are as people, as an organization. So just having an understanding that they're never going to go away. If someone tells you good job, that's just as dangerous as someone telling you suck. But you need both of them. in order to get to where you want to get to. And there's no place I'd rather be.
I hear that to me, and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm reacting in real time, but I hear that as like a biblical worldview. I need to be rebuked. I need to be called out on mistakes I made. And then I also need to hear, hey, we're well pleased with you. Great job. And that is the relationship that we should be having with God, with Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. We need to go to this Bible and it's like, oh God, I'm doing this wrong, I'm doing that wrong, I'm doing this wrong, I'm doing that wrong. And then start making corrections so that we know that God is like, look at Whitlock. Man, he got on his Stairmaster today. And he only ate 1,200 calories yesterday. I'm well pleased with you today, Jayson. We need that, and this is where this secular worldview that everyone else has adopted, you got to surround these people in constant praise, and you cannot criticize them because they're so fragile that they'll just melt. And any criticism is racism and blah, blah, blah. So you just got to praise this special select group of people, gays, blacks, and Jews. That's all you can do is praise them. It's a very secular worldview that leads to destruction. This guy's got it figured out.
What you're really talking about, I think, in a broader fashion is just that's what humility looks like. A guy who says, I can't get too high, I can't get too low. I just need to be humble. Radical humility and radical gratitude will get you through virtually anything. Look, God's got me. I've got my son right here next to me. I just won an NBA championship. There's nothing I could be more grateful for. Thank you, Jesus. That's what that dude's thinking. And so as you know who he is in all reality, and this is why you like him so much. He's the anti-Deion Sanders. Deion is the guy that his own press conference looks at Ed Werder and says, do you believe now? I saw what you wrote. So the criticism is off limit. Joe Mazzulla is exactly the opposite. I need some criticism. Please bring it to us. That's going to help keep me stable and grounded. That's how our team's going to succeed. He's the anti-Deion.
I like that. The anti-Deion. I can make, I haven't taken any shots at Deion lately. You've just... and this is what's fascinating. It's like this guy is the blueprint for coaching excellence, and he won't get the credit for it from the very community that love anything black. They love to allegedly celebrate, but because this guy is doing it from a Christian worldview, and he's not playing up his race, and this dude, he checks all the boxes. He got a black wife, black kids, the whole night. But, he's leaning into being a Christian. And so it's going to be fascinating to watch how Landscape and all the other, black media outlets, how they handle Joe Mazzulla. Because trust me, if he had a secular Barack Obama, Black Lives Matter mentality, good Lord, it'd be nonstop. They'd be, we'd be celebrating. We'd be giving him the attention that we give to Deion Sanders, the gold chains and the lack of substance. It would all be going towards Joe Mazzulla, but something tells me that won't happen. TJ, before I let you go, you're the perfect person for me to ask this question. Bill Belichick, 24-year-old girlfriend, the word is out. Gronk made jokes about it at the Tom Brady roast, and late last week, TMZ and other places started reporting about Bill Belichick and his supermodel or model girlfriend, influencer, whatever she is. She's 24 years old. Bill Belichick, I believe, is 72 years old. Defend the coach who you had a cup of coffee with.
You think I should defend him? Why don't you try to defend him?
You love Belichick. You love Belichick. Defend him. I love Belichick too, but
you actually, as I'm about to say this, I think you're the one exception to this rule that I'm aware of. But I think you should. There should be a 10-year difference maximum in who you date. And I think with you, I still would like you to have a family. And so you're 57. I'd make an exception for you because you actually want a family. You actually want, like, you're looking to do this right. Belichick's just probably looking to bang a 24-year-old. So there should be a rule. If you're 72, 62 is your maximum difference. It'll be your minimum age is 62. I can't figure out why, and I guess, society's so sick and crazy and stupid that we sort of just laugh at this. But like this 24-year-old girl, what is she doing with her life? Can you imagine what her dad is thinking right now? You're banging Bill Belichick, a 72-year-old. Like there are guys his age in a nursing home right now, and you're all good with this because he's made some money. What are you doing?
Well, they met on a flight while she was in college and preparing her senior thesis or preparing something, and Bill, had some advice for her, and they became friends. And the next thing you know, one thing led to another. And I'm going to disagree with you. If Bill Belichick were dating a 52-year-old, I wouldn't bat an eye. No, 72 and 52, I wouldn't bat an eye. No,
20
no one
years?
would care. No one would think. 72 and 52? 52 is a grown woman.
20 years. And women live longer. So that means this woman's going to be a 30-year widow.
I got it. Trust me. I know. Trust me. I've done the math, and it's one of the reasons why I'm like I just don't think the family thing. I just don't think it's not fair. So I get it. But if a 72-year-old is dating a 52-year-old, I would even say 50-year-old. I got no problems. That's a grown woman. She knows exactly what she's getting into. She who knows? She may have it in her. When you get 50, your friends start dying, and it's just not uncommon.
50?
They get cancer. They get cancer and things like that. TJ, yes. And as for 57-year-olds. I'm still thinking Elijah Muhammad's advice applies. Half your age plus 7 still works. And so for me, that's 35. And could, depending on the math, if you go half your age minus 7, you could actually get all the way down to, a 28-year-old, perhaps. So
you don't have a limit? What's you got a personal limit that you're willing to share on air? What is it?
No, not that I'm willing to share. Not that I'm willing to share, because I'm very flexible on the. It's all.
Do you have a
situational.
maximum? What's your maximum?
I'm sorry. Say that again.
Maximum. Okay? You don't have a minimum. What's your maximum age?
Probably 45.
Wow. See that? I think
45.
That's fair. When you're looking for a family, the biology comes into play. You got some things to think about. Belichick's not looking for a family. His son is older than this woman.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm looking for a family. You got to be fair to the kids, and if you're not going to be there to walk your daughter down the aisle, perhaps you should think about doing something else.
That's why you're on the Stairmaster. You're gonna make it.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm uncomfortable now, so I'm going to let you go. Bill Belichick, 24-year-old, that's not a good look. And it authentically makes me question, can he really coach an NFL team anymore? Maybe that's been the problem the last couple of years. If he's been distracted in pursuit of a 24-year-old, trust me, that's a hell of a distraction. I used to go through that type of distraction in my late 30s, early 40s, and it's a hell of a distraction. Anyway, thank you guys. Thank you, TJ. Guys, I want to talk to you about Sarah Gonzalez and the Blaze Originals team. They decided to head down to Michigan, a pivotal swing state, to find out what's going on with our elections. Michigan changed its voting laws after the 2016 presidential election. Why do you think they did that? Maybe it could have been an effort to manipulate the election process. The Blaze Originals team has done a docuseries on voter fraud. Voter fraud exposed, how elections can be stolen. It's based on what transpired in Michigan, but it really applies to all of America. It's something we all need to learn about. This docuseries is tremendous. Voter fraud is the promo code you can use at blazeoriginals.com/Whitlock to get a $30 off an annual subscription to Blaze TV. So you'll have access to all of our great docuseries, including Sarah Gonzalez's deal, Voter Fraud Exposed, How Elections Can Be Stolen. Again, use the promo Voter Fraud at blazeoriginals.com/Whitlock to get $30 off your annual subscription. Steve Kim, next. Welcome back to Beef. As I walk you through my top 50 media beefs of all time. Yeah, I'm an equal opportunity beefer. It's like, Randy, are you asleep at the wheel? Big lips are in style. I'd love to squash this beef. I mean, I was not real happy at all. I was less than thrilled. I was displeased. And now we have beef.
모두 다 빨리 박수 쳐 기다리지 말고 서둘러 Reason that I'm back is to feed you raps I see that you up here below So
All right, welcome back. Time for the Korean Cosell. We've saved the best for first. All right, I'll admit it. We saved the best for last. Steve Kim, you guys, I like him. You guys love him. His hair's finally come together in a suitable fashion. I do think, now that I look at it, I think you just need to add a little streaks of black or darkness. I don't know. I'm not sure. I go back and forth. One day I like it, the next day I'm, anyway.
Hey, Whitlock, men don't do highlights, okay? We're just doing the salt and pepper on the Crouching Tiger, okay? We're going to keep it simple. Good grief.
All right, Steve, let's start. I want to play you this clip of Stephen A. Smith going on about black coaches reached out to him over J.J. Redick and LeBron's podcast. Let's play the clip.
What I can tell you is this. Numerous coaches, black coaches, called me expressing how they took issue with that podcast taking place. And I think you know enough to know that that's true. Some of them felt very salty about that. We certainly are not blaming J.J. Redick. You got your podcast. Maverick Carter approaches you about doing this idea. Who the hell would? I jump at the opportunity.
Wait, can I pause you on that? They were salty because he chose to do a podcast with a white guy, or because it hurt Darvin Ham?
Because it hurt Darvin Ham.
Okay.
Because it hurt Darvin Ham. So any of us would do a podcast with LeBron James. Anybody who says otherwise, that they wouldn't do a podcast with LeBron James, is lying through their damn teeth. I know I would. I know you would. I know Wendy would. I know anybody would. That would be an honor for us because he's one of the greatest who have ever played, and he's a basketball savant. So we're not faulting JJ in any way for doing the podcast or for the content on the podcast with LeBron James. But at some point in time, we do have to do this, Jay. As I said to Wendy last week, we have to remember the things that we've said about LeBron James as it pertains to his brilliance, as it pertains to controlling a narrative, as it pertains to being 2, 3, 5 steps ahead of others in terms of what you're plotting and what you're planning and what have you. And then that'll raise an antenna.
Good Lord. I mean, LeBron James is closer to not being able to spell cat than he is to being brilliant. I mean, I'm just sorry. Why? And I would say that when I used to be a dumb jock. And so why are we acting like these jocks who spend all this time developing their bodies are these intellectual geniuses? They're not. It would be stupid for them to pour all that energy into that as opposed to making as much money with their athletic ability. So that's the first thing. All this, LeBron's such an intellectual genius and he needs to know this and blah, blah. And black coaches are upset that he chose to do a podcast with JJ Redick. I don't get it, Steve. Your thoughts.
First thing, I got to give Molly Q a little credit. She kind of put it out there saying, hold on, is it a black thing? Because that's kind of the elephant in the room that I'd be wondering. And she made Stephen A. clarify that. Now, with that being said, Jason, with or without a podcast, hasn't the track record been, and specifically during his run as a Los Angeles Laker, isn't LeBron a coach killer regardless? I think this goes beyond just doing a podcast or JJ Redick. The reality is, when you sign up to be the head coach for LeBron James's team, you're probably going to have to do a lease or rent. Do not buy, especially in LA. Property taxes are really high. The rents are kind of out through the roof. So the bottom line is, whoever gets this next job in LA, whatever you're going to do in terms of lodging, rent or short-term lease, because you're not going to be here like Pat Riley or Phil Jackson. And the other thing is, you're right, Jason, as you talk about the brilliance and the intellectual capacity of most athletes, it kind of reminds me that famous line from Hollywood Henderson. You could give Terry Bradshaw the C and the A and he still couldn't spell cat. But nowadays, there is this agenda that if you're not a dumb jock, because that is now the baseline, if you're not a dumb jock, oh, now you're so intelligent. So that's basically what it is. And once again, that is Stephen A. Smith pandering to Clutch Sports and certain people over the internet.
Steve, I do think LeBron is a dumb jock. I think most jocks are dumb. I used to be a dumb jock. And then once I quit, okay, I'm no longer an athlete, and started doing it, it's taken me a long process to remove
Jason,
some of the dumbness. Yeah.
Don't you think that's all relative? I get it. I don't know if any of these new generation athletes are going to be Alan Page. Okay, or any of the guys that ended up like the old Lombardi Packers. You ever look up how these guys did after leaving football? These guys like Willie Davis did amazing things. And football is probably like the third or fourth best thing they ever did. They ran businesses, they ran corporations. They really made a difference in their communities and were great citizens. Nowadays, if you don't have 5 baby mamas and you don't have any thing on your rap sheet, you're thought of as like a really good guy as an intellect. But I would say, Jason, and you may disagree, by today's standards, and this is all relative, I think that LeBron is not as smart as he thinks he is, but I don't look at him by today's standards as a dumb jock. Completely.
He can't conjugate subjects and verbs, Steve.
Hold on. I didn't expect him to be James Earl Jones. And I get it. He still hasn't even reached page 3 of most books that he reads. But, I mean, you compare it to what is across again, we're going by relative comparison. That is all I am saying. That's
I got it. I don't think let's NBA players. There's 450 of them, I think. 450. Is LeBron in the top 150, middle 300, or bottom 150? And I would say he's in the bottom 150.
Bottom of this era. Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Yes. Jeez, that's a low blow.
Look, he has a tremendous amount of talent, and that's brought him a tremendous amount of wealth. And so he gets to pretend to be a business mogul because they've given him a bunch of money because of his tremendous athletic ability. I'm not even blaming the guy. I think, and people need to hear me out, if I had as much physical talent as LeBron James, I would be in the bottom 150 as well. It's a byproduct of just having that much physical talents and gifts. Look, man, there's people that, because you can't even get anywhere close to the truth, but read his tweets, read the things that he said. He put up a picture of a cop who stopped a woman from killing another young woman, and he basically said, let's target this cop. How smart do you think that person is?
Well, look, I'm not going to argue this.
What percentage of the NBA players tweeted out, hey, we need to blame this cop who just saved a black girl's life. What percentage of NBA players did that? Only LeBron James did it. That's why he's in the bottom 150.
You know what? You may have a point. Not that when you put it that way, you're right. Look, as
they
Chick
all had
Hearn would say,
access.
yeah, you mean, look, as Chick Hearn would say, the late great Chick Hearn, he ain't exactly Phi Beta Kappa. But again, when you talk about athletic or pretty privilege, he has really been a beneficiary of it. But I'm just telling you, we don't have a lot of Julius Irvings anymore. We really don't. This is a low bar that we are setting across the board in terms of
because
intellect.
they don't have to be.
Yeah, they don't have to be.
Listen,
you are right.
And they don't have to be. They get paid generational wealth for playing a game, and social media has dumbed everyone down. These guys are addicted to social media. Isaiah Thomas, that era of athletes, if they wanted information, they could. Anytime you can just go to Google and get answers to all your questions, that reduces your critical thinking ability. It really does. You don't have to read anything. You can just go to Google, Wikipedia, or Twitter and get your answers. These guys aren't being developed to be smart, and we sit there, and people like Stephen A. Smith, who also isn't that smart, sit there and think, well, LeBron's an intellectual genius. We know he's a basketball savant. Cut it out. It sounds like hate on LeBron, but it's just true. He's not. He ain't Grant Hill, man. He's not.
Bill
ain't
Bradley,
Barkley.
he ain't. Yeah. He ain't Magic Johnson. I'm just, I get it.
Magic and him might be close.
Oh,
you read Magic's Twitter feed, and I love Magic, but I mean, holy.
Yeah, I can really tell by that comment.
I do. Okay, let me give you another guy who I don't think is that smart. He's smarter than LeBron. He's smarter than LeBron, and he's smarter than. But I don't. Tiger Woods with all that golf talent, he ain't that smart.
Tiger Woods at least got into Stanford. Now, I do believe that he has.
They let anybody into Stanford.
Oh, no, they don't. Well, nowadays they do. Nowadays they have lowered the standard, but back then they used to be kind of a real school, a very respected, prestigious one. Now, Tiger, when it comes to street smarts and having a little bit of savvy and having being up on game, as the kids say, yeah, he's a dunce. He's a dunce.
Tiger Woods and Magic Johnson are my two favorite athletes of all time. I'm going to give you my third, Caitlin Clark. And she's got a lot of talent, and that works against her intelligence. And I'm just telling you factually. Everybody thinks I'm just picking on LeBron, but I'm just telling you.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
You're saying on your Mount Rushmore, sorry, Jalen Rose, but on the Jason Whitlock Mount Rushmore of all-time favorite athletes, it is Tiger, Magic, Caitlin. Oh my!
Yes, sir.
I shouldn't be stunned based on the fact the last 2 years I've had the list. I did not realize she was all the way up there. Wow.
But right now, yes, she is. Yeah.
I just thought this was a momentary simp, but wow, Mount Rushmore.
No. Look, I never watched golf, and Tiger made me watch golf, and he made me watch golf when he wasn't even playing. Magic Johnson, I love basketball. I used to call myself Fat Magic back when I used to actually play basketball. I love Magic Johnson. I love the way he played. And then Caitlin Clark has made me watch the WNBA.
No.
And watch women's college basketball. No one else. Yeah.
Hold on. Let's clarify a couple things. I would have called you Junior Oliver Miller when you played ball. Number two, you don't watch the WNBA. You still watch Caitlin Clark. Let's clarify that. You're not watching the WNBA. You're watching
That's
one
true, but
player.
She's in the WNBA. Yeah.
But she's in the Mount Rushmore. I'm stunned. We got to get a graphic. We're good on those thumbnails. Chisel out a Tiger, an Irvin, and a Caitlin. I don't know who the fourth would be, but I'm stunned she's already in there. Wow. Okay, I learned something today. I learned something.
I don't even know where I was going with that, but with the Stephen A. Smith, LeBron James. I don't know if I've meant it to be a conversation about LeBron's lack of intellect, but it turned into that. I want to play you this clip of Doris Burke yesterday, since we're talking about my girl, Caitlin Clark. Doris Burke last night, I think it's Porzingis fell down or was pushed down, and she made a crack about Caitlin Clark. Let's play the clip.
Down. Crowd reacting to the replay on the big screen. Washington just trying to send a little message, play some physical basketball.
If that were Caitlin Clark, it might spark a debate for a week.
Steve, is that hate? Did she just take a shot at my girl, Caitlin Clark? You know I'm very sensitive.
Here's what I think. I think she's pandering. I don't think she took a shot at Caitlin Clark, but that's her, because she would never, let's be honest, do you think she'd ever make a crack at Angel Reese in that same vein? No, because Twitter would come after her, and then she'd be like, oh, you're one of them. But that's her way of saying, hey, when's the cookout? I'm coming. I got the invite, right? So that's pandering. Because, again, I'm just going to ask this question to our great audience. Do you dare think Miss Burke would make that same joke in that vein about Angel Reese?
Great point. I don't think she would make it about an NBA player. I don't think she don't want that smoke. And so it was like, I can remember when Russell Westbrook or Rajon Rondo got into it with a fan or whatever, and Doris Burke, oh my God, what's going on? You got to get that fan out of here. And I was like, oh God, they've convinced Doris Burke to worship these players, and Rajon Rondo gets in the face of some fan, and the fan's a bad guy, whatever. And I'm telling you, I used to love Doris Burke. She's overexposed now. She has no business being number one. The entire presentation of the NBA Finals by ESPN, from the halftime show to the pregame show to the game analysis, all of it bad. And, the ratings somewhat reflect that. But I think you make an excellent point. She certainly wouldn't make it about Angel Reese. I don't think she'd make it about any black NBA player. And she is pandering. And she's pandering to social media because she knows, like everyone knows, ESPN and all these corporate media outlets, they're controlled by social media. And so if Black Twitter starts coming after Doris Burke, she's toast. And she knows it, so she's pandering. You nailed it.
Jason, in corporate legacy media, you cannot be honest about this. That's why, thankfully, there are YouTube channels and independent content creators, and I've been sending you some stuff. I think Ock Nation, shout out to him. That is my favorite son, man. This Crouching Tiger salutes you. The daily coverage he is giving on the breakdowns and actually giving analytical proof that Caitlin Clark is being blackballed by her own teammates. I mean, he's actually giving video proof, and he's doing daily work. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy makes Jason Whitlock look like a neutral observer here. But shout out to him. But you're right. If you're on that network, you can't dare make a joke about Angel Reese, or I'll even go a step further, any female black athlete in that league.
Yeah, that's accurate. If you like this show, you're going to love the merchandise we have for the show. Go to shopblazemedia.com today, and you can check out everything from our Fearless Army t-shirts, hats, and dog tags to our God, Country, and Truth Bomb shirts, and a whole lot more. Of course, there's all the other Blaze Media merchandise right there at your fingertips. Everything from Blaze Heritage and Blaze Media collections, jackets, t-shirts, hoodies, socks, mugs. There's so much there. Go to shopblazemedia.com today. Check out all the great merchandise, everything you could ever want. Use my promo code, Jason10, to get 10% off your entire order. That's shopblazemedia.com, promo code Jason10 for 10% off. Do it today. Steve, we'll stay in a similar, same lane. Cam Newton has made some comments about his lack of broadcasting opportunities. He doesn't unpack them as his lack of broadcasting opportunities. He's speaking up for black or minorities and how come they can't get fast track. Anyway, let's play Cam Newton.
I'm always going to tell Tom Brady, Tony Romo, Greg Olsen, Troy Aikman, Matt Ryan to go get the bag. What I am doing is saying how in the world are they the only ones that's getting access to these type of contracts? Because somebody told me, they say, well, you don't get these contracts because you're not polished yet.
Who's to
What
say?
type of media training did Tony Romo have before he just popped up commentating the game? And he does a damn good job.
He does.
Tom Brady, same thing. Like I ain't never seen Tom Brady cover no.
And they could be doing some stuff behind the shadows that's not
understood though.
But they skipped the line of a lot of people.
That is my point. How can we get other minorities to skip the line too? Because we all know ball.
Cam Newton has a tree sticking out of the top of his head.
Yeah.
And he's wondering why he can't get a broadcasting job. And he's taking pot shots at Tony Romo. And, Tony Romo quarterbacked the Dallas Cowboys, and there are benefits that go along with being the quarterback of the America's team. Troy Aikman won 3 Super Bowls with the Dallas Cowboys. Tom Brady obviously is the greatest player of all time. Cam is just doing too much here.
Here's the issue, and Cam is an accomplished quarterback. We can argue about the merits of the consistency of his career, but he did go to a Super Bowl. He had that magical, dominant MVP season in 2015. But first of all those guys that he named, you could make an argument, for the most part, didn't all those guys have better careers than Cam? At least consistently they did. There's no doubt about Brady and then Aikman with the 3 Super Bowls. But as you mentioned, presentation at that level, it's one thing to do your own YouTube channel. And Cam, I've got to give him credit. He's done a nice job of cultivating his own platform. Credit to that. Does a really good job on that. But presentation is important. And there was a time before Cam had that long hair, he looked very presentable, looked very, very good. And I'm thinking, ooh, you can go places with that. But Jayson, I don't know on Monday Night Football or the Sunday night game of the week on NBC if you can look like the Mad Hatter like that and be trotted out as the number 1 guy. Presentation matters. The other thing, in terms of being polished, I think his diction is pretty good, but you have to speak a certain way. And at that level, the street slang does not work. That does not play in Peoria. I know people do not want to hear it, but I'm going to be honest. If you look at the way these guys talk at that level, there's certain lines you cannot cross. The other thing, Jayson, if Cam gets one of those big jobs, I would say, first of all, good luck. But number 2, stop going to those 7-on-7 tournaments and stop getting into fights, because that does not help his cause. I know a lot of this, people do not want to hear it, especially from me, but I'm just going to tell the truth. Argue with me about the points, because you can't. All of this is the blunt truth.
Listen, as it pertains to polish, there is a sliding scale. And so for that number 1 job and these guys getting that big money, that number 1, they want to present an image of the NFL and the network and the game that's very polished. But then, again, Aqib Talib, Fox Sports hired him calling games. This guy's a thug. He was a thug throughout his college and pro career. He helped get a father assassinated on a football field in Dallas. He was given a broadcasting job. He's been a thug his whole career. Presented himself in a ghetto, thuggish fashion while on Fox Sports. I love this guy. He's probably in my top 20 athletes of all time. Michael Vick gets to work on Fox Sports despite spending time in prison. I love Michael Vick. I don't want anyone to hear this as criticism. I love Michael Vick. Love his whole story. I love what Tony Dungy helped and Andy Reid helped him accomplish in the second wave of his career. But this whole thing, Richard Sherman, they catch this dude on tape trying to break into his in-laws' house, and the next week he's got a job on Amazon Prime on their halftime show. What is Cam Newton talking about? Put yourself in position to get one of these jobs. I love this guy, Warren Moon. Love him. He's great. He could have had one of those jobs, but I don't know the facts of it, but he had some domestic violence issue that, kind of discounted him getting one of these number one type jobs that the Hall of Fame quarterbacks get. And you say, well, Tony Romo's not a Hall of Fame quarterback. Okay. But Tony Romo, just as you said, Steve, and look, he was never MVP. But 4 Pro Bowls. Cam had 3 Pro Bowls. Matt Ryan was MVP, took a team to a Super Bowl, appeared in 4 Pro Bowls. Cam Newton, 1 MVP, 3 Pro Bowls. There's a way. Take Mike Royko, who was the greatest newspaper columnist in American history, in my view. And so I wanted to be like Mike Royko. And so I tried to carry myself and present myself the same way as Mike Royko. Mike Royko was an everyday guy that liked to go sit at a neighborhood bar, have a drink, and play softball with people. He was everyman. That's why I've leaned into, and it's factual, but my dad's bar, the Masterpiece Lounge, was my favorite place on earth. But I played that up as part of my persona because of Mike Royko. He grew up the exact same way. And so if Cam or anybody wants the jobs that Tom Brady and these other guys, why not look at them and say, hey, I need to carry myself in the same way as them. I need to present myself in the same way. I got to take this tree off the top of my head and present myself in a more polished fashion. Why not?
Jason, it's funny you mentioned Michael Vick. And you think Michael Vick would give the same advice he gave to Colin Kaepernick while he was sitting next to you on Speak for Yourself? Hey, you want that job? Cut your hair. Go cropped. High top fade, but make it like kind of a little bit shorter than cameo. Seriously. I mean, would he be willing to do that? The other thing is, Jason, I remember shortly after their retirements, as TNT got the package for NFL Sunday Nitro, I don't know if people remember that, Joe Montana and Lawrence Taylor, based on their status, were given jobs. They were microwaved to these primetime positions. Eventually, so was Eric Dickerson on Monday Night Football. You know what the problem was? At that stage, they were not good enough to keep those jobs. And Joe Montana was just very uncomfortable. And I think he also had a role at NBC. Lawrence Taylor, I heard the problem was he didn't really prepare. He didn't really care about the job. And unfortunately for Eric Dickerson, one of my favorite athletes, he was not a sideline reporter. I thought that was just a bad role for him. But guess what? In that particular setting, you still have to be good enough to keep the jobs. Think about Greg Olson. Greg Olson was the number 1 guy last year. But because he's not Tom Brady, as good as he was, he got relegated. I mean, that's a tough profession. And by the way, he's a white guy. So it's not like it was just like some, The other thing I really think about is you have to be willing to travel and do it every single week and give up a portion of your life. It's not just like going to your podcast studio and pontificating for 3 hours. You have to go to, because Joe Tessitore gave me the rundown of what he had to do when he was on Monday Night Football. Jason, I was amazed that for 1 3-hour football game, he literally has to work 6-7 days a week in terms of preparation. So again, it's easy to say that, but that job comes with a lot of responsibilities also.
I'm looking at because I'm sure a lot of this conversation is going to revolve around, hey, look at how they're doing the white quarterbacks. And so I'm looking right now at a list of the greatest black quarterbacks. And I've already rattled off Michael Vick. He got a job at Fox Sports. Yeah. He's not calling games. But again, Michael Vick's been to prison, dogfighting, all of that. So that kind of knocks him out of getting the type of job that Aikman and Romo and these guys got. Warren Moon, I mentioned, great guy, great Hall of Fame quarterback, had those domestic violence issues. Steve McNair, he's dead. Steve McNair has passed away. Would have been a candidate for that type of job. Donovan McNabb would be a candidate for that type of job. Drank himself out of it. 2-3 DUIs. That's on Donovan McNabb. It just, I could go, who are the other
Robert
candidates?
Griffith III, RG3, Jason, had a flame out of a career, but he's made a media career out of it. That's an example.
Yeah, and he's woke and trash as a broadcaster.
Putting that aside, yeah. Yeah, but outside of that, he's great.
I don't know if Doug Williams had an interest in broadcasting, but, you know, I think Doug Williams probably played in one Pro Bowl. Obviously, he won a Super Bowl. But it's do you think Patrick Mahomes will have some opportunities when his career is over? Yes. Do I think Lamar Jackson will? Probably not. He doesn't talk that well. Plain and simple, period, end of story. Russell Wilson, do you think he may have a shot? Particularly if he does anything in Pittsburgh. If he somehow led Pittsburgh to a Super Bowl, he'd get fast-tracked, no different than Drew Brees, and he'd get his shot, and we'd see if Russell Weirdo can be a broadcaster. But this is just whining and the whole victim mentality that and again, if you're going to come in with Cam's mentality, the next thing you know, you're the broadcaster and everybody else has to work around your victim mentality. And next thing you know, you're sitting up calling a game and you're, instead of talking about the game, you're talking about how someone's getting treated unfairly and it's racist the way, it just turns into a hot mess. So Cam, and I'm telling you, I was a big Cam Newton fan, particularly when he was at Auburn. But good Lord, man, grow up. And I'm going to circle it all the way back to where we started at. These guys just ain't that smart, man. They're just too talented. They're just not that smart. Plain and simple.
You may have convinced me.
All right. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Steve. Great job as always. We'll play tomorrow, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came in like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on the corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, all deceiving. We all wanna be free. We want